Good evening. I would like to welcome all of you to the May 9th, 2021 council meeting of the City of Mayfield Heights. I would like to extend a happy Nurses and Caregivers Week to all of you that may be in attendance. We are ever so grateful for you, especially this past year. Thank you. Mrs. Lloyd, may I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Belstria.
Present.
Mr. DeJohn.
Here.
Mrs. Finney. Mr. Mano.
Here.
Mrs. Sabetta.
Here.
Mrs. Snyder.
Here.
Mrs. Teresi.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the approval of the minutes from our council meeting of April 26, 2021. I hope everyone has had time to read these minutes over. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move, Finney.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Are there any suggested changes, deletions, or amendments to these minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay. These minutes are approved as written. Next, we will move to correspondence and announcements. Does any member of council have any correspondence or announcements? Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. The Chagrin River Watershed will meet this Thursday, May 13th, 4 p.m. via Zoom. They are celebrating their 25th anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sabetta. Mrs. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On May 5th, I received an email from a resident and on Cedar Road that the garbage bin was not picked up on Tuesday by Kimball. They called the service department and were told to call Kimball themselves. They did call Kimball, and they said that they would send out a truck on Tuesday. And at the end of the day and early evening, there was still no pickup. They called Kimball again, and they said they would send in a truck, and it was Wednesday, and there was still no pickup. The resident said they're at wit's end because the calls to Kimball appear to be ignored, and they're in need of using the garbage bin for buildup of garbage. This is the second time in the past few months where their garbage was not picked up, and the only problem with Kimball is that they don't pick up the loose paper that does not get in their truck that flies all over the yards. They're not happy with their service, and they were wondering if someone from the city could call Kimball and see what the problem is that they can't seem to get there on the correct day.
Thank you. Mayor, would you like to address us with the service director? Thank you. I know I had a complaint as well on Lander Road from 2 residents with the same issue. Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Mr. Mano.
I had a complaint as well, a resident on Iroquois. And they called Kimball, and the person at Kimball got real cute with them and more or less told them, they'll get it next time, don't worry about it. That's the response they got.
Okay.
And as far as the other complaint about the refuse going all over the street, they've done the same thing on Fruitland. I've watched them 2 weeks in a row. Whatever falls out, and on a couple of them, fell out of the garbage cans before they got them up. They just leave it there and keep on going.
Okay. All right, thank you. We'll follow up with them. Are there any other comments from council? We will now move to reports and officers, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. Bicycle patrol units will begin in May through August. The goal is to increase the presence of patrol officers and community engagement with residents. You may notice their presence on residential streets and shopping areas. Excuse me. The police department received a grant from the Cuyahoga County DUI Task Force. The funds will be used to increase the number of officers this spring and summer for traffic enforcement, and specifically for impaired drivers. Joe Newman served as city's representative to the Euclid Creek Watershed and Public Involvement and Education Committee for many years. As you know, So we had, in Joe's honor, a red maple tree and a dedication plaque will be installed next month at Oakville Park, so you can keep an eye out for that. Shredding and Recycling Day was held this past Saturday. It was a great turnout, despite the weather was a little chilly, but we did have over 200 cars drop off shredding and recycling materials, so it was a big success. And also, update on the pool. We are currently in the process of hiring the architecture firm, and as of last Friday, 8 firms requested RFQs. And May 14th is the deadline for RFQ submittal. And some people have been asking about Mainland. The demolition to the site should be completed next week. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions for the mayor? Mr. DeJohn?
Yes, just one. Is it protocol for somebody that has a problem with Kimball to call Kimball direct and not our service department to call for them?
I'll have to talk to the service department. I'm not sure how they've handled that in the
I
past.
just
It's
need to know that.
usually the service department handles it, I believe, but I'll find out.
All right, thanks.
Are there any other questions for the mayor? Thank you. Moving to Mr. Murphy, our law director.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I hate to disappoint council, but I have no report this evening.
Oh, shucks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Director of Finance, Mrs. Fagan.
Thank you. I will make up for Mr. Murphy because I do have something to mention tonight. The U.S. Treasury did put out their guidelines on the new ARP funds. 150 pages came about 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I've started going through it. It is definitely written in government language. So as I go through and decipher this, I will keep council up to date on what is allowed and what is not allowed.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions for Mrs. Fagan? Next, we will move to reports of committees, commissions, and boards. Starting with the Building Committee, Mrs. Tressi.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Building Committee has not met, so I have no report.
Thank you, Mrs. Tressi. Finance and Audit Committee, Mr. Belstraya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No report this evening.
Thank you. Legislative Committee, Mrs. Finney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report this evening.
Moving to Public Works and Service Committee, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Public Works and Service Committee did meet on May the 6th. I called this committee meeting to discuss the Woodhawk resurfacing project. It was noted in the meeting that this project was moved up on our road program list for repairs because of the possibility of a grant for the connectivity trail project. This grant money would have helped subsidize the total construction of the street. However, it was noted that we do not normally totally reconstruct streets that are not in, that are determined by our engineers to be in total disrepair. It was also noted in the meeting that Woodhawk was not rated by our engineers to be totally repaired, and the only reason we looked at total repair was to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by putting the trail in there and narrowing the road. The committee decided to give the mayor a chance to discuss this project with the residents on the street, and hopefully he can get that done by the end of the first week in June. Although this street is not scheduled high on our list to be repaired, I feel that since it was discussed and although not promised, that we should go ahead and reconstruct this street. And we did talk about several different ways to doing that, and the most optimal way is to repair the base, the concrete base, and put asphalt on top of it. We still can't get it done. We can get it done this year if we can get our bids in by no later than July 1st. We also discussed the Marnell and Ascot areas, the dye testing, which is about 95% completed. Once it's completed, Mr. Gerson will provide us with a report of the problems. In addition, they'll also look to see, initially, he's saying that the sewers don't look that bad in those areas, but they're not perfect, but they don't look that bad. And they'll also look to see if there's any problems that are being caused by the homeowners themselves with those sewer systems. And hopefully, since if there is, and we find a problem, we can use that ARPA money for those sewers, which I think that's one of the areas we can use that money for. In the next council meeting, Mr. Gerson will be giving us the 2021 road and sidewalk program bids, and hopefully we can approve that and get those projects started. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Are there any questions for Mr. DeJohn? Mayor, did you have a date for that meeting for the residents? Not yet. Okay. All right. Thank you. Recreation and Parks Committee, Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Deck Hockey is hosting free triad days on Sundays, May 16th, 23rd, and June 6th. No registration is required. Come to City Park near the pool between 1 and 2 p.m. for children in kindergarten to 5th grade. Are you looking for a program for your child this year? The city is having a few specialty camps going on. Cheer camp, tennis camp, varsity sports camp for speed, power, and agility, volleyball, football, and swimming. More information on these programs can be found on the website. Are you an adult looking for a program outside this summer? We have tennis lessons, silver shooters, bocce, and pickleball programs available. For more information, go to the website at www.mayfieldheights.org. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any questions for Mr. Mano? Safety and Transportation, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no report, but Resolution 2021-40 is on the agenda, and Chief Elliott is here for questions.
Great, thank you so much. Board of Zoning Appeals, Mrs. Sabetta.
Thank you again. The Board of Zoning Appeals will meet tomorrow evening here in council chambers at 7 p.m. Council does have the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commission, Mr. Ballestrea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Planning Commission did meet last Monday. Council was copied on the minutes as a result of that meeting. We have two motions on our agenda this evening, and we'll discuss them as they come up.
Thank you, Mr. Ballestrea. Next, we will move to the public portion. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, the state of Ohio has established guidelines for public gatherings. In an effort to keep residents of the public, council representatives, and other city employees safe, the city of Mayfield Heights has closed the city council meetings to public attendance. Since public participation and transparency are important values of the city, residents are invited to view the meeting via live streaming and broadcast. Additionally, questions and/or comments may be submitted to council office by noon to Karen Fagan. At this time, I believe she has one piece of correspondence.
Thank you. Yes, I did receive one piece of correspondence from Wayne Natali at 6440 Woodhawk. It is addressed to the mayor and all of council. On behalf of the Woodhawk Drive and Woodhawk Club condominiums, thank you for taking the time at the April 26th council meeting to publicly comment about the needed repairs to Woodhawk Drive. It appears that conversations have now been started by the Public Works Committee to discuss options, timing, and costs. We hope that these conversations will not be held in a vacuum and that input from residents will be sought. Clearly, there was acknowledgement between the mayor, council, and the city engineer that a complete tear-out and concrete replacement would be in the long run the most cost-effective solution with lasting results. Speaking on behalf of the residents, we believe it is more important to complete the required repairs properly. We are also opposed to any plan to narrow the street. Maintaining the safest possible ingress and egress that the current width provides is essential. Again, if the city had the wisdom and foresight to make this street 30 feet wide 40 years ago, traffic has only worsened and has only worsened, and for resident safety, the additional width is needed. If speed remains a concern, there are other options at your disposal to address this concern. If completing the reconstruction means waiting until the 2022 to complete the repair properly, I think you will find support for that. What you will not find support for is any proposal or plan that calls for a multi-use trail on the north side of the street or the narrowing of Woodhawk Drive. It was refreshing at the last council meeting to hear in the mayor's comments an acknowledgement that repairs or reconstruction of Woodhawk was indeed predicated on NOACA funding. We think it is important for this group to know that contrary to the mayor's comments, the majority of residents are not misinformed about what the Woodhawk Connector Plan would mean to our street. While your intentions may have been well-intended, you clearly stated in your comments there was no money earmarked for Woodhawk Drive this year. If we would have gotten the grant and if residents would have gone along with the idea of the trail and been amicable to that plan, we would have gone back to council and would have voted to increase the budget. We do take exception to the mayor's comments suggesting there is a lot of misinformation, rumors, and untruths floating around concerning the proposal. The very expensive proposal buried in the city's website clearly outlined your intentions that were never clearly communicated to the residents. Those who were fully able to load that document and review it did so and reacted to it. Any misinformation, rumors, or untruths exist because of the lack of information provided to residents when you've had multiple opportunities to do so in writing or verbally. We continue to wait for council to introduce and vote on a motion to dismiss any effort to pursue the Woodhawk Connector Plan and to espouse a firm commitment to replace Woodhawk as built, a 30-foot wide street constructed of concrete. It is signed by Wayne Natali.
Thank you, Mrs. Fagan. Okay, I will now open up the public portion to anyone here this evening that might have an item on tonight's agenda. If you would like to speak, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone here this evening that would like to be heard?
Good evening, Council. My name is Andrew Perrell. I'm speaking on behalf of the Cleveland Clinic this evening. Looking for approval on the Hillcrest Hospital Cancer Center addition that was presented to the Planning Commission last week on May 3rd. My plan this evening was just to give a brief overview of the project for the Council's awareness. If there's any questions, either myself or my colleagues can address those. But to give a quick overview of the project, it's a 10,600 square foot addition to the existing cancer center, which is towards the south of the Hillcrest campus. The main objectives of the project are to increase the patient experience and increase patient access. So the second floor hematology oncology area, we'll be expanding that out, really bringing in a lot of nice, natural light, really creating a more domestic feel for the patients. Also, on the existing ground level outside of the ICU, we'll be adding a valet drop-off area, which will nicely provide access to patients coming there. So that's kind of the main overview of the project. Looking for approval to continue moving forward on that.
Thank you, Mr. Perrell. When it comes before us, if anybody has questions, we can ask then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to be heard this evening? Mr. Gerson.
Dan Gerson, City Engineer. Bob, I appreciate the report. It's very well done. I just wanted to give a quick update. We did receive bids on Friday for the 2021 road program. We received 8 bids. We've received 2 that were lower than the estimate. We received 4, I believe, that were real close and 2 that were slightly higher. So we will have a recommendation the next council meeting for the 2021 road program. We did receive 3 bids for the sidewalk program. Unfortunately, all 3 bids were higher than 110% of the engineer's estimate. So we'd like to rebid that. It looks like we were a little aggressive on the amount of sidewalks, so we'd like to rebid it to keep it in that $200,000. So I don't know if that requires a motion, but we'd get in the paper tomorrow. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeJohn?
Mr. Gerson, while you're up there, can you give a little definition to when we totally reconstruct roads in answer to Mr. Natale's letter? Obviously, they think that we totally reconstruct all roads in the city, and it's my understanding that we don't, unless the base cannot be repaired. So if you want to elaborate on that?
If I can.
Please
Yeah,
do, yes.
I'll give it an attempt. I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's, we go through and we evaluate roads based on a pavement condition rating that ODOT uses. We evaluate the streets. The pavement condition rating takes in a number of factors. To date, since I've been here, we've reconstructed 2 roads, which would be Commonwealth and Genesee. We're going to do a 3rd road this year, which is Wharton, I apologize. Generally speaking, we look at the condition, we look at the pavement failures. Many times we can see the pavement failures on a street like, for instance, Woodhawk. We can see where the pavement failures are. Other times we can't, where they've been covered with asphalt. But generally speaking, you go down, you look at the condition of the curbs, you look at the condition of the main center line, you look at the joint repairs that have been done in the past, you look at maintenance history, and when it gets to a point where we feel that there's not any more maintenance you can do and you need to reconstruct it, we'd reconstruct it. Some of those numbers, generally speaking, you get into 50s, 55s in terms of a pavement condition rating is when we generally will look at that, but it's not a hard, fast number. So most of the streets we do what they call a mill and fill. If you have a concrete street, one of the first things we would do is do concrete repair, which we've done some repair. It's also been done on Woodhawk in the past. After you do the concrete repair, the next thing is you do a wearing course, which is a asphalt overlay. So one of the examples I gave in the Public Works meeting was Richmond Road, north of Mayfield. It's in Lyndhurst. That was just recently done. I think it was either last year or the year before. That was concrete street. They had done concrete repairs, and then they went and did an overlay, and they ground the gutters out so you have the same curb reveal. That's one of the things I would recommend if we move forward with Woodhawk, but obviously those are all up to discussion.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Gerson. Thank you, Mr. DeJohn. Is there anyone else this evening that would like to be heard? It is 7:23. I'm closing the public portion. We will now move to resolutions, beginning with Resolution 2021-39. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution number 2021-39, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Tyler Technologies to provide an enterprise resource planning system for the Finance Department and Human Resources Division, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move Finney.
Moved by Mrs. Finney, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Mano,
No.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
No.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
No.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
No.
First reading.
Resolution 2021-39 will be placed on first reading. There is,
Madam Chair, if I could.
Mayor,
Is there a reason why this is being put on first reading?
I was just going to ask ask the law director if we can have discussion.
I can ask a question, can I?
Yes. Yes. You can discuss at any time.
At this time, I'd open up discussion and comments from council. Mr. Mano.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Your mic on? Is your
first of
mic
all-
on? Is your mic on?
I had this thing on, it's on. It doesn't work.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Hold it. Hold it close.
You gotta put it in your mouth, otherwise it don't work.
Don't do that.
First of all, this is a very expensive proposition. That's number one. Number two, I feel that this should have gone to the Finance Committee first for total discussion, seeing as how there's about 200 pages of information here. and then it should go to a committee of the whole. You're looking to spend $500,000 and a maintenance fee of $65,000 a year for a city of 20,000 people. I don't know that we need something like this. I don't certainly think we can afford it at this point in time, especially with all the other things that we have going on in this city right now, and we're still not sure what's going to happen with this COVID thing. I just don't think that this is an expenditure that we need to get into at this point in time. Maybe down the road, but not now. And either way, this should still go to the Finance Committee, and it should be discussed in its entirety, and then go to a committee of the whole for everybody's input. But until that happens, I won't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mano. Are there any other comments?
Madam Chair?
oh.
Well,
I would love to respond to that.
Yeah, and I think, let me intercept for just 1 minute. So the reason that moved this in this direction is because there were council people that have contacted me over the weekend that felt uncomfortable for voting in something that's kind of costly and it's brand new to our community, to our city. So I think going to move to a vote without hearing Mrs. Fagan talk about it, without giving further information, I mean, he's right, 200 pages or 50 pages or whatever, to someone like, we don't know that garb. That's not something that we know. So I think it's important that we do discuss this. It is a very, very costly a piece of system that will need to come into the community at some time, but we do need to discuss it. So that's this option, and this is the reason we want this direction. That was your question earlier. I'm sorry. Mrs. Fagan.
I do want to clear up a couple things. The total cost on this is $169,614 with $61,591 annually for a support fee after that. The total amount that Mr. Mano referred to was an all-in for everything over multiple years. If we compare this to what we are paying for our current software and what we are getting from our current software, it's apples and oranges, a night and day, and we are spending a considerable amount of money for our current software also. This is something that we have talked about since the day I walked in and came on board here. I'd be happy to talk about it further in Finance Committee. I will say that, Mr. Mano, I sent everything out before the end of April so that all of council would have the opportunity to ask me any questions. And Mr. Dijon was the only one that had reached out to me before this afternoon to ask any questions. I try to be very transparent with this, get you information early so you can have more than enough time to look it over, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Can I answer that?
Mr. Mano.
How come this was never brought before council before it was sent in an email, especially an email of that size? This should have been talked about at this dais before anything was done, before any email was sent out. You may have had conversation with the administration about your wants and needs for this thing, but nobody on this council knew about this or where it was coming from or anything else. Did we get quotes from other companies? I mean, you put this legislation here and you want us to sign off on the expenditure, and it is $500,000 if you read this thing, and then an annual maintenance fee of $61,000, plus the other costs of paying for travel time for people to come here. Isn't there somebody local that we can get involved with this, that we have to bring people in from out of town and pay for their travel and lodging and stuff? This is ridiculous. There's 20,000 people in this city. Do we need this?
yes, we do.
The former finance department ran this city for 30-some years with none of this type of stuff. Not this kind of cost.
Mr. Mano, I'll be happy to discuss this with Finance Committee and with all of council. We've been talking about this since I came in, every budget meeting, every budget cycle. And you're right, the prior administration did run things that way. And I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop because I'm going to say.
Hey, Mr. Mano, we have to address it. Mrs. Tressi.
We did receive the information on April 28th. It was a lot of reading. There were a lot of components. There was a lot of reading. I took the time to call two of the references to find out one community told me that their total contract is 1.1 million over their 7-year contract. $133,504 annually, that's their recurring cost, which comes to $934,000, and then the implementation cost is $180 plus the travel. And they're a community of 47,000 people. They have 8 people in finance, 7 people in IT. So we don't have anyone in IT. So who is going to host this software?
That's one of the reasons why this was, I'm sorry, Jim.
Wait, who's talking, the mayor or you?
No,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was addressing Mrs.
Oh,
Fagan.
thank you. I just heard the mayor's voice. Go ahead.
One of the reasons that the review group as a whole liked the Munis solution was because it was hosted remotely. It is cloud-based, so we would not have that any longer on premises. We wouldn't have the cost of the server, having to have the IT firm come in and address the server issues, upgrading the server and all of that. It would be cloud-based, which also then helps with our disaster recovery because we would be able to access the software and have access to all of the components remotely if needed.
Then will we eliminate our data serve contract because we won't need them for?
They do a lot of other things for us, not just finance. They will not, the part of it that refers to the server for software for finance would not be needed.
So then their
And
costs.
we have had Data Serve look this over, and not the entire thing, but the IT portion of it, because I am not an IT expert either. And they absolutely confirm the idea that we should be in the cloud and it should all be cloud-based.
And you've used this system before because you came from Cleveland Metro Parks, you and Dana Scully. So you've used it before and you know how it works.
I have, actually, this would be, I didn't think I'd have to do another one, but this would be my third conversion with them.
So the 2 communities that I'm sorry, am I allowed to keep asking questions? I don't.
Yes, usually it's just 2, but
I
I will
know.
let you. Go ahead.
And that's why we really should have
That's fine.
a committee, the whole meeting. I'll stop asking questions now, but
So does any other member of council have any questions? Okay, Mrs. Tressi, you can continue, and then I'm going to refer this to to a Finance Committee meeting, and this is on first reading. So go ahead and finish what
Oh,
you need.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's fine. So the discussion portion will be out there for people to think about.
So in both of the communities that I spoke to, both had around 47,000 residents, so they're twice as large as we are, told me that it took about 1 year for this to come to fruition. Is it going to take that long for us as well?
Absolutely, it will be, because part of the process with the conversion, it's not just, okay, we're using this software and now we're using software B. We're going through an entire, the proper word's escaping my mind now, but we're looking at all our processes and all of our procedures and trying to come up with better ways of doing things to make things more efficient in the city. We will be setting up workflow in the city electronically for the first time, which we don't have right now. So we're not sending pieces of paper around the city, so that it can be done electronically and be more efficient. The cost differential, if I can address that also, between what we've been quoted in some of these other cities. All of the Munis products are quoted based on what modules you were going to do.
That's correct.
So our original quote was much higher than what this is, but we went through, Dana Scully is in the audience, she's our assistant finance director. Dana and I went through and really looked at this and said, what does this city need? And we paired off the things that we don't need.
How many modules would we be purchasing?
Ooh, that's a great question. It would definitely be payroll module, accounts payable, accounts receivable. I think there was actually a laundry list in one of the emails I sent out. We'd be able to do billing. It would be the HR and the human capital management portion of this, which Renee is on board with. Fixed assets.
Can we reduce the cost by eliminating the HR aspect of module?
That
I mean,
was
do
one.
we really need that?
That was one of the definite things that we were looking for, and that Renee has said is needed. She needs the updated software, This would eliminate the use of some standalone software that she is currently using, and more importantly, the modules would talk to each other. Where right now, she's inputting everything, or everything's getting inputted into her standalone software, and then we literally have to start from square one and re-input everything again, which just leads to the possibility for errors along the way. We're trying to make it more efficient so that we can all work more efficiently. The software should be working for us, we shouldn't be working for the software.
Mrs. Fagan, I do have a question real quick. So each module costs something different?
Correct.
And then that breakdown is standard, or is it just pertains to our city, like the amount that they cost?
They gave us a price per module for our city. They did discount that along the way, and then that's where they came up with those final numbers.
Okay, great, thank you.
And both, I'm sorry.
Mr. DeJohn has a question.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Just one. So if we have the HR module, could we eliminate that contract service we have for the management of our FMLA?
I'm not sure if it does have FMLA. I would have to research that. I don't want to say anything on camera without being 100% certain, but certainly the NeoGov portion of our onboarding and bringing new employees into the city, that portion could be eliminated.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Tressi?
Mrs. Fagan, both communities that I spoke to, one local and one a little further away, said that they were disappointed in some of the support from this company, that the response was poor, very slow support, and on the upgrades, they had a hard time engaging with Munis to get Munis to come in and do the upgrades. They said it was very painful.
One of the nice things about about going cloud-based is they would be doing the upgrades in the cloud. They would be there, they would be done for us. We wouldn't be uploading those. Service is always an issue with software companies. The Munis system ranks the priority. If it's mission critical, there's a response time. If it's, very important but not totally mission critical, it may take a little bit longer. So it just depends on where your call falls in that. I will say with our current software, because it is a very antiquated product, we have one person who's an expert on it. They're down in Dayton. They never come up here either, so it's not like being remote is a problem. But I worry that person could retire one day, and then we would have a problem.
And just one last question, I'm
Mrs.
sorry.
Tressi?
Will we reduce some of we have, 5 or 6 people now in our finance department? Can
No,
we reduce payroll? Because this is all going to be automated, so do we need a person who does payroll, assistant, director, and then we have a couple other people? Do we need them if we're being
have
automated?
3 full-time and 1 part-time person in finance currently. And yes, we would need them. There's other things that we should be doing. We should be doing more projections and more things along that line that we don't have the time with, that would help with that. Also, from the department's standpoint, we ask the departments to follow their budgets and plan well, but with our current software, they get a report at the end of the month, and by then it's stale data. This will give them real-time data up to the minute on where they stand in the budget, so they can make an intelligent budget decision.
Mrs. Fagan, I know you had other companies inquire about this. Was there anybody local that had?
None of the companies that responded were local. Our current software provider declined to put in a quote because they knew they couldn't meet all of the things that we were looking for, and we put out a very detailed RFQ, request for proposals for it.
Okay. Mr. DeJohn?
What about cities our size? Are there other cities our size that use this company?
They go from counties, I don't know if they do any states, but I know they do very large counties down to smaller communities. Something else that was extraordinarily important to us, and obviously to you all also, I hope, is we really needed a company who had experience calculating payroll in the state of Ohio. The pension systems in the state of Ohio have very quirky reporting requirements, and we needed somebody that would be able to generate the information in a manner that the pension systems would accept it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tressi, I see your finger.
Mrs. Fagan, what do we pay our software company now?
Sorry about that. In 2020, it was a total of $49,899, so just shy of $90,000.
90,000 or
I'm sorry,
50,000?
50,000,
Oh.
I was looking at the 9. And we've been with them since, I believe, 2006.
So is it an average of 49,000 a year?
It has gone up over the years. I looked at 2020, I did not go back further than that.
So we pay them 49,000 a year, and we're going to be paying 61,000 with an upfront cost of 169,000.
Correct. But that does not include so many of the features that we're looking at. Real-time processing, an HR function, the ability to track fixed assets, all of that would be included.
I believe you did get an upgrade, like a quote from them for an upgrade to the current system. Is that correct?
The current system, we're on a very dated version of their software. So if we did stay with them, they would be strongly encouraging us, let's go with that wording, strongly encouraging us to go to their newer version. And the cost on that one, the salesman for our current software would be between $165 and $180 as an initial investment.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. DeJohn?
Well, one thing I asked Mrs. Fagan when she came here is to look into a new accounting system, because the accounting system we have now, I believe, in my honest opinion, is horrible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Snyder?
Mrs. Tressi?
Mrs. Fagan, do we need new computers to upgraded or more more memory, et cetera, for this?
We should be absolutely fine in the finance department. We have a computer rotation schedule in the city, so we should be okay in the finance department. You'll notice in their quote, there is one piece of outside of equipment for the key cards so that the signatures are printed on the checks, and that is the only thing that we are definitely aware of at this time. We may need a scanner, because this would also give us the ability to, just a small desktop scanner, to scan those invoices in, so when you're looking at the records in the system, you can keep drilling down till you get to the actual invoice.
Thank you, Mrs. Fagan. At this time, Mr. Ballestrea, I'm going to have you schedule a finance meeting, and this will give everybody some more time to come up with further questions, and then we can bring it back to council. Thank you.
Okay.
Moving to 2021-40, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2021-40, a resolution authorizing the mayor to purchase 5 self-contained breathing apparatus, face pieces, and associated equipment for the Division of Fire, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mr. Belstria?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
By Mr. Mano, second by Mrs. Tressi. This proposal is well needed for our fire department. This would further the health, welfare, and safety of the city and its residents. This would cost roughly about $30,750. Mr. Elliott, Chief Elliott, I'm sorry, is with us this evening if members of council have any questions for the chief. Seeing none, roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Finney?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Belstria?
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder?
Yes. Resolution 2021-40 has been approved. Moving to Resolution 2021-41, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Resolution 2021-41, A resolution determining the premises known as 6589 Kingswood Drive, Mayfield Heights, Ohio, Cuyahoga County Permanent Parcel Number 863-31-027, to be a public nuisance, authorizing the mayor to take all steps necessary to abate the nuisance, and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
Move
Moved
Finney.
by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi.
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes,
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Moved by Mrs. Teresi, second by Mr. Mano. All of you should have received the memo from our law director explaining this resolution. This property has been deemed a nuisance to the city of Mayfield Heights and has been recommended that we take some sort of action. Mr. Mano.
How come it took so long for this to get to this point? I mean, that isn't something that happened overnight or over a week or over a month. I mean, have people been complaining from up there? Has anybody, was it on anybody's radar that this place was this bad?
Mr.
And why did it
Jamieson?
take so long?
Can you please come up to the podium?
Sure. Thank you. I can answer that. It's been in court for 2 years, so Judge Coletta thought he could help the guy and it was continued, and we couldn't do it anymore, so we went to this process, emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Jamieson. Are there any further questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
yes,
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. Resolution 2021-41 has been approved. I will turn the next two ordinances over to Mrs. Teresi to read, as I will be abstaining.
Thank you, Madam President. Ordinance 2021-18, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Temporary President. Ordinance number 2021-18, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the International Association of Firefighters Local 1500 and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Do I have a motion to place ordinance 2021-18 on second reading?
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mano,
Second.
seconded by Mr. DeJohn. Roll call on the motion.
Mrs. Sabetta,
yes,
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Abstain?
This motion has been placed on second reading. We'll move to ordinance 2021-19. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ordinance number 2021-19, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining agreement with the Ohio Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, patrol officers, and declaring an emergency. Second reading.
Do I have a motion to place ordinance 2021-19 on second reading?
Move.
Move Finney.
Moved by Mr. DeJohn, seconded by Mrs. Finney. Roll call on the motion to place on second reading.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
yes,
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Abstain?
This motion has been placed on second reading. Madam Chairman?
Thank you. Now we will move to motions, beginning with motion A, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve signage on the awning for the Tavern of Mayfield at 6088 Mayfield Road.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Tressi, second by Mr. DeJohn. This new establishment is seeking approval for a new awning. It came before the BZA, I believe, or
Planning
Planning
Commission.
Commission, I'm sorry. Are there any comments you'd like to add, Mr. Balestrea?
Yes, the new owner was present at the planning commission, had a very attractive signage to place on the awning above the tavern. It's going to be called the Tavern of Mayfield. All signage that's placed on the awning has to go before the planning commission, and the planning commission overwhelmingly agreed with the signage and approved it.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes. This motion has been approved. Moving to motion B, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve a preliminary, excuse me, preliminary site plan for a 10,600 square foot addition for Hillcrest Hospital at 6780 Mayfield Road.
Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. DeJohn, second by Mrs. Sabetta. We heard from the applicant this evening. This is a preliminary site plan for the expansion of the Cancer Center at Cleveland Clinic Hillcrest Hospital. Are there any questions?
This is,
Mr. Balestrea.
Andrew, did you happen to have the plan that you could show council? I think it would be nice for them to see the conceptual drawing of what we looked at Planning Commission. You could put it up here.
Camera on and everything?
You had the 3D drawings too?
Yep.
The color ones? Those were nice.
So I'll just get a little bit oriented here. Okay, so this one should just help to get you oriented a little bit. This is the Hillcrest South Campus, where my finger is pointing. That's Mayfield Road, just to get your bearings. Right here is the existing cancer center. This plan here shows you where that 10,600 square foot addition would be. You know, patients can travel back here and kind of go through, you know, the portico share underneath the second floor to get dropped off via valet. Any questions on that before I show the 3D renderings? Okay. Here are just a few cut sections that kind of better illustrates, you know, the second floor expansion. So that's the existing cancer center is here, kind of from this point to the south. That's the main addition there to the hematology oncology space underneath, right outside the existing ICU is the valet drop-off area. And we'd also be extending down below grade to the radiation oncology area as well. And there would be elevators that could take folks up and down. It's a little bit better floor plan of the second floor area. These are some conceptual renderings here. So I mentioned earlier, we're really trying to create a little bit more of a domestic environment for patients, really improve that experience. So a lot of natural light. One of the innovative design features that we're looking to incorporate into this project is a skylight. So I can show you another rendering of that, kind of how that would look. So you can see up above there in kind of a courtyard type space where we're trying to curate a little more of a bit communal feel, really get a lot of natural light in there via the skylight. And Here's one more. These are kind of the semi-private infusion bays along the east and west side. So this is where patients can go if they want to be a little bit more private and not necessarily out, in the courtyard area. And one last sort of 3D rendering. This kind of just shows you a viewpoint from outside.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, thank you.
Does any members have any questions? Thank you for the drawings. Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Teresi,
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Finney,
Yes.
Mr. Mano,
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn,
Yes.
Mr. Belstria,
Yes.
Mrs. Snyder.
Yes, motion B has now been approved. We will now move to new business and comments from council. Is there any member of council that has any new business or comments? Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Sabetta, second by Mrs. Tressi. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay? Thank you, we are now adjourned.
Donna Finney.
Has left conference.